The terrible accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in 1986 is still the worst nuclear disaster in history. Worse than Fukushima in Japan in 2011 and the 3 Mile disaster of 1979 island accident in southeastern Pennsylvania, USA. Before you watch this video, I'm going to ask you to support my channel with a thumbs up. It won't cost you anything, but it means a lot to me and my channel. Thank you. Ghosts. A nuclear physicist at the University of Buffalo named Andrei Kharsukhov had a terrifying experience while at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in 1997. He reported hearing cries for help. He got there around 7:30 a.m. and headed straight for the reactor for sarcophagus. He told officials that he could clearly hear someone's faint but desperate cry for help putting out the fire, so he ran upstairs and told those who let him in. But he was told that he was the first person to enter here in 3 years. Also, a password, a handprint, was required to enter. Before the disaster in early April 1986, strange things had happened. Station workers saw a large, black, bird-like creature with a 6-meter wingspan and large glowing red eyes that was eventually called the Black Bird of Chernobyl, a harbinger of death. Those who saw it reported suffering such things as horrible nightmares and receiving threatening phone calls until the morning of April 26, 1986. While conducting a paranormal investigation of Chernobyl and, in particular, the remains of Reactor 4, the Destination Truth team from the Sci-Fi Channel was stunned to see a human figure on an infrared camera working inside Reactor 4. The nuclear shadows of the residents of Pripyat. These are not shadows, but drawings made by graffiti artists in and around Pripyat who illegally entered the exclusion zone from Belarus and Germany. These shadows evoke an unsettling feeling, depicting residents of the abandoned town who were evacuated the day after the accident on April 27, 1986, never to return. Mostly images of children, many of these silhouettes resemble the disturbing nuclear shadows left by the victims of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki that ended World War II. Abandoned Pripyat attraction. On April 26, 1986, Pripyat Amusement Park was not yet complete. The official opening was scheduled to take place 5 days later on May 1. The park featured the most popular rides, such as a 26-meter high Ferris wheel, parachute jumps, cars, swings boats, and a shooting gallery. Many Soviet cities had similar culture and recreation parks, and some of them are still in operation today, but Pripyat Amusement Park never got its sunny day, although it was open to the public for a short time. On April 27, before the evacuation was ordered, most of the rides did not work that day. The abandoned park is a silent reminder of the disaster. The blood-soaked forest. 35 years have passed since the Chernobyl disaster, and while wildlife seems to be thriving, flora and fauna are showing signs of radioactive contamination. Blood red forest is a forested area where all the pines turned blood red immediately after the accident and then soon died off and fell. The most disturbing aspect of the blood red forest is that even 15 to 20 years after the disaster, these trees are not rotting, while most of them turned to dust within 10 years of being on the ground. In light of this, the scientists decided to conduct several experiments by filling specially prepared bags with leaf litter from uncontaminated areas, taking care to avoid insects, and then leaving the bags on both contaminated and uncontaminated forest plots in the exclusion zone for a year to test the rate of leaf decay. Bags left in uncontaminated areas were as expected, with normal decomposition rates of 70% to 90% of the leaves. But the leaves in the contaminated areas retained 60% of their original weight, indicating much less natural destructor activity. This suggests that radiation exposure had a deleterious effect on the ability of the Chernobyl ecosystem to replenish itself with nutrients, which may have caused stunted tree growth, as has been recorded. The sad but creepy dollops of Pripyat. The 49,000 residents of Pripyat who were evacuated on April 27 believed it was temporary and they would return soon, and left everything they had, including toys, since they were not allowed to take them with them. The dolls were left in homes, schools, and kindergartens. They make an eerie impression. Stalkers of Chernobyl. Chernobyl stalkers are those who illegally enter the exclusion zone, apparently out of their own morbid curiosity. In 2007, Ukrainian programmers presented Stalker post-apocalyptic first-person game, the action of which takes place in a virtual exclusion zone around Pripyat and Chernobyl. The creators of the game said they wanted to tell the world about Chernobyl. Stalker has already sold 5 million copies, mostly in Russia and Eastern Europe. Hospital. High on the roof of Pripyat City Hospital number 126 is a sign reminding the health of the nation is the wealth of the country. The main wing of the hospital, located in the Pripyat neighborhood on Druzhba-Narodov Street, is part of the extensive medical complex of MSCH 126. Pripyat City Hospital had 410 beds, polyclinics and outpatient clinics. The town with its dental clinic, maternity department, infectious diseases clinic and morgue was prepared for any emergency they could imagine. April 1986. 237 workers, firefighters, and soldiers were treated for severe radiation poisoning, and many died. According to a 2006 World Health Organization, WHO report, 28 firefighters and rescue workers died within the first 3 months. The victims' clothing was so radioactive that it had to be taken to the basement of the hospital, where it remains to this day. The victims were taken to Moscow, where the only institution capable of treating radiation poisoning was located. Hospital documents and medical instruments are lying around in a mess, and the basement is the most radioactive place in the city. Fungi. Scientists determined that a fungus called Cladosporium sphaerospermum, which grows around the most radioactive site of the Chernobyl disaster, consumes radiation through radiosynthesis. They decided to experiment with it in space, and within a month they found that the fungus actually blocks radiation. It literally eats it up. Experiments on the ISS showed that Cladosporium uses melanin to convert radioactive gamma rays into chemical energy, and that this ability could prove useful in future space exploration. Scientists hope that the fungus can be used to protect both equipment and crew from deadly radiation during long-duration spaceflight, and, more importantly, the fungus can help clean up radioactive waste. Mutated animals of Chernobyl. One of the most obvious questions that arose after the 1986 Chernobyl disaster was whether wildlife would suffer from mutations. Scientists around the world were surprised to find that wildlife in the exclusion zone had revived much earlier than expected, and life appears to be going well. Researchers thought it would take decades, maybe even centuries, to restore life. Radiation had not spared everyone. Many wild animals and pets were born with serious birth defects, such as multiple heads, limbs. Plants were also affected, including the so-called redwood forest, dead, discolored pines that died from radiation. The hottest tourist destination in Ukraine. To commemorate the 35th anniversary of the historic tragedy, Ukraine International Airlines began offering air tours the day before the anniversary of that fateful day, April 26. Passengers can view a unique view of the abandoned nuclear power plant in the city of Pripyat for about $106, 2,970 Ukrainian hryvnia. The ticket gives them a seat with a panoramic view of the city and the exclusion zone from just above the minimum height of 900 meters above Chernobyl on an Embraer 195 airliner, with an opportunity to take selfies with the pilot. Ground tours to the Chernobyl control room and reactor number 4 are available, but a protective suit is required there, making air tours more popular with tourists. While the coronavirus has seriously undermined tourism, it hasn't stopped it. In 2019, 104,000 tourists visited Chernobyl. In 2020, only 32,000. Chernobyl and Pripyat continue to be visited illegally, despite the dangers and the threat of very large fines. I thank you for watching. Your support is very important to me. Your comments and thumbs up motivate me to release new videos on interesting topics. Subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the new videos.